Today I want to share an interesting paper that was recently published by Julian Levy, a young scientist in British Columbia. And what he did was use Dungeons and Dragons, of all things, to provide an answer of sorts to a unique psychological question. Now, he published this paper with Alan Kingstone, a scientist out of the University of British Columbia, and he and Julian have a special relationship. Alan is Julian's father, and I should mention that Julian is about 12 years old. And if you're wondering what question a 12-year-old could have solved, well, basically it's why you, when you started watching this video, probably started looking right here in my eyes.
Now, the debate this paper is weighing in on is why we make eye contact with people when we first meet them. The two sides that are arguing are basically split over whether or not we are naturally drawn to eyes. One side says, yes, we seek out eyes so we have an idea of what's important in our environments because we can track someone's gaze and figure that sort of thing out. The other side saying it's more of a coincidence. We're not quickly looking for some eyes. We just happen to look at the thing right in front of us, which is a face, and right in the middle of that face are some eyes. What makes it so difficult to test is because we don't really have human beings that don't have eyes in the middle of their face. So, how can you test to make sure people are seeking out eyes rather than just looking at what's directly in front of them? Now, Alan Kingstone, the psychologist from UBC, was wondering this when his son Julian suggested that instead of using humans and tracking how our gaze moves when we look at them, why not use monsters, in particular the monsters from his Dungeons and Dragons manual. So instead of having a human being whose eyes are right in the middle of their face, you'll have these weird floating head things that have eyes all around them. I'm not really a D&D player, so I'm not sure what they are, but hopefully these pictures will give you an idea of the kind of things people were looking at. And it's a cool idea. And this wasn't just some sort of idea he gave to his dad and his dad went and did it. The really neat thing about this story is Julian actually set this experiment up himself. He had some help finding the subjects, but he set up the eye tracking systems, he helped prepare the testing data, and he took care of the trials, and really he did a lot of the work on his own. And that's why he's actually credited as the lead author in this study. And very cutely, his middle school is the institution he represents, which I thought was pretty funny. So overall, the experiment went off pretty well, and of course he had some help writing the paper, but I read the paper myself, and it's actually pretty good and interesting. And the results, well, the results find that when human beings are looking at a monster for the very first time, we do indeed seek out their eyes. We don't simply stare forward what's in the center of these creatures, like whatever weird head things they've got going on. Our eyes actively seek out where the eyes of another creature might be, which points to the fact that, gaze is a very important thing because we look to others for cues as to what is or is not a threat within our environment. And when you can conceptualize where a gaze is headed, you have a better idea of what's important in your immediate surroundings. Now, this doesn't close the case for why we try and make eye contact when we meet someone, but it is pretty good evidence, and, well, to me at least, it was quite compelling. Now, some of the caveats might be that, well, we can't really trust the gaze that was measured by some of these people who were looking at the monsters, simply because monsters are weird, and the eyes may have been distracted by the fact that they were looking at some very weird stuff. And so that might have influenced the results a little. Obviously, there will have to be further studies, possibly refining this method or coming up with new ones. But in the meantime, I think it's really neat that Julian Levy is the youngest person, or I think might be the youngest person who has ever been published from a journal that's come from the Royal Society, which is a pretty big deal and really impressive. And I hope this shows that science is in the reach of anyone, so long as you have a good idea.